make the napkin ring, you need memory wire, and this is a special kind of wire you can get in the jewelry section of the craft store. It is special because you can't bend it very easily. It's pretty hard, and that's so it'll stay in this shape. It's like a slinky, and no matter how much you pull it, it still comes back to this coil that it came in. This is small bracelet size, which is about 2 inches in diameter. We found this pretty hank of beads to do our beading. It's a mixed glass beads and copper mixed sizes, real pretty copper colors. You could also use seed beads. And for tools, we've got wire cutters. These are heavy duty wire cutters to cut this metal on the memory wires very hard. So it's not our good wire cutters. And we have our round nose pliers.
To make our tassels for the napkin ring, we've got a skein of embroidery floss in teal. We've got a different kind of jewelry wire. This is 26 gauge brass wire. We've got 2 copper colored bead caps, and we have a piece of cardstock that we cut 3 inches by 2 inches.
To make the napkin ring, we're going to start by cutting 5 coils of the memory wire. And what I mean by that is we're going to count out 5 coils around so that we have a spring that's 5 coils long. It'll all be one piece of wire, but 5 coils long. So here's the end of my slinky memory wire here. And to count it, I'm going to bring up the next coil to meet the beginning one there. I'm going to call that 1. Reach underneath the next one is 2. Reach under the next one is 3. This one is 4, and this one is 5. So to right here, this is my beginning wire here. I would cut here for 5, but I'm actually going to cut it with a little extra wire because I'm going to bend ends. I'm going to roll some loops in the end of the memory wire to keep the beads from sliding off. So I'm going to give myself about a 1/2 inch for each side. So I'm going to add about 1 inch here from the beginning. So it goes around 5 times plus 1 inch, and I'm going to cut it with the wire cutters. This is very hard wire, which is how it retains its shape. So I'm using my heavy duty wire cutters, and I have to really give it a squeeze to get it to cut. And now I've got 1 napkin ring, and I can save the rest of that memory wire to make the rest of my set of napkin rings. So here's my coil, and the next step I want to do is roll a loop in the end of this memory wire. And to do that, I've got round nose pliers. I'm going to grab the end here of the wire, and I'm going to roll a loop in. It's very hard wire, like I said, so you have to give it some elbow grease to get it to bend around, but you can do it. So roll it around, and if you need to, reposition your pliers so that you can keep getting a good angle on it. You don't have to try to bend past where you don't have any strength. Just move the pliers around so you have more strength to bend that. And there's a loop in the end. I'm going to just give it a tiny bit more tweak so that this end of the loop meets the bottom of the wire. That loop is going to keep all the beads from sliding off of our napkin ring. Now I'm going to turn the coils over so that this one's on the bottom, the loop's on the bottom, and I've got my open end at the top here. And I'm ready to bead. These beads came on strings. This is called temporarily strung beads. So they're meant to be cut off of the strings and used on new wire or new string. So I'm just going to reach down here and cut one of these pieces and dump the beads into this little cup so it'll be easier to use it. I'm probably going to spill some on the table, but that's okay. So this is probably enough beads to get started. And now I'm just going to feed the beads onto the memory wire. You can feed the beads on just randomly. I liked how the beads look on the skein here, all randomly set up, so I think that's how I want to do them on the napkin ring. And I'm just feeding them on one at a time. And with these kinds of beads, there are a couple tricks to getting the beads on the wire. You can put the beads in the palm of your hand and take the end of the wire and poke it into the beads. And this is a little bit faster, you'll see. You kind of tip the beads onto the wire that way. And then maybe I'll pick up a big one and some more smaller ones. And so try this and see if you like it doing it this way. I do think it's faster. So I'm just going to keep on feeding on these beads. And as I go, I'm going to push the beads all the way around to the bottom. I'm going to feed on enough beads until I have all 5 coils beaded all the way up until there's about a 1/2 inch of wire left over. Or another way to look at it is you're going to make a loop that's going to end right where your beginning loop is. So with enough wire here to bend your last loop. So I'm almost done beading. I'm just going to add one more bead, a little one here. And then I'm ready to put a loop in the end. I want these loops to be pretty near each other when I'm done. So I'm going to start here at the end with my round nose pliers. I'm going to grab the end of the wire just like I did before, all the way out at the end, and I'm going to use some elbow grease to bend. This wire is very hard, and I'm going to bend a loop, and this loop is here. I could put more beads there, but I think it'd be better to just keep rotating, which is fine, so the loop passes by itself a tiny bit, and that's fine because I can trim that little excess overlap with the wire cutters. And I'll put my hand over that so the piece doesn't fly off. And then I can just use the pliers to flatten that loop a little bit. So now we've got our 2 loops. They're at about the same position on the napkin ring. And at this point you could be done, or you could put charms on here, but we've decided we're going to put tassels on here. So that'll be our next step.
We're going to make 2 tassels just like this one to embellish our napkin ring. We'll have a tassel on each one of our little loops here. So we already made one so you can see what it looks like. This is the embroidery floss that we picked out in that pretty teal, our bead cap and wire, and we're going to show you how we made this. The first thing you want to do is cut the embroidery floss into 4 pieces that are 36 inches long each. So I'm going to pull one of those out here. So this is one of our 36-inch pieces of our embroidery floss. And embroidery floss is actually usually a bunch of strands of thread together. This particular embroidery floss has 6 threads together. And what we want to do for our tassel to make it fluffy is pull the threads apart in pairs. And just slowly pull it out from the other threads. And try not to let it get too twisted as you're working, or it'll get tangled. So this is kind of the trickiest part of the whole process. So we're going to set our other pairs aside for now, and we're going to work with our first pair of threads. And what we want to do is wrap the threads around our piece of cardstock. And this piece of cardstock is just 3 inches cut this way and 2 inches across. And what I'm going to do is lay the end of my embroidery floss at the bottom of the card like that, hold it with my thumb, and I'm just going to start wrapping. And what this does is this is going to keep all of my threads the same length, which will help me make a really nice tassel. So that's our first set of, or first pair of threads there. And now we'll set that down and separate our other pairs here and do the same thing. Apart like that. Some of them work better than others, so just be patient and don't let it get knotted. Here we go. So here's my second pair of threads here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lay that down on the card like that and just wrap it around. And we cut the embroidery floss into 36-inch lengths just to make it a little more manageable. Because you're pulling the threads apart, if you're working with the whole skein or a really long piece of embroidery floss, it can get really crazy unwieldy and get tangled pretty easily, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to continue pulling my threads apart with my other 3 lengths of embroidery floss, and then wrap them around my card until I've got all of my threads wrapped around this card, and then we'll show you what's next. This is my last little wrap here, and we're just going to ignore these threads at the bottom. Those will end up getting trimmed off when we trim the whole bottom of the tassel, so don't worry about them for now. But now that all of our pairs of threads are wrapped on our card, we're ready to turn this into our tassel. And to do that, we cut a 3-inch piece of our 26 gauge wire, and I'm just going to bend that into a hairpin with my fingers, just like that. You don't really need a tool to do that. And I'm going to feed the hairpin up behind one side of my threads here. Make sure you get all of them in the hairpin. And then I'm going to pull the hairpin up to the top of the card. And this takes a little bit of kind of wiggling to get it up to the top. And now I'm just going to use my fingers to squeeze that together as tightly as I can. And then I'm going to take one wire and just wrap it around the other one like that. I'll just do 2 little wraps like that. And I'm going to leave one of them straight. And I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm going to use the flat side of my cutters against my work like this. Make sure I don't cut through the main piece. Set that aside. And now I'm ready to take my card out, and the threads will be kept together by that piece of wire. So I'm going to keep this card. I'm just going to set it aside for now, but I want to keep this card so that I can make more tassels for more of my napkin rings. And now at the top of this tassel, I'm going to push the little wire together a little bit so it makes more of a circle. I'm going to feed on my bead cap. So I'm feeding that piece of wire up through the center of my bead cap. I'm going to pull the bead cap down over the top of my threads there. And I'm going to make a wrapped loop in my wire, and that's so that I have a nice loop to attach it to our memory wire napkin ring that we made. So I'm grasping the wire right above that bead cap with my round nose pliers. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend, reposition the pliers, and just pull the wire around the top to make a loop. I'm going to reposition the pliers again to the bottom jaw of my pliers and then finish pulling the loop around, or the wire around, so that I've got a loop. You see there's like a loop there. Now I'm going to grasp that loop across with my pliers and I'm going to pull the tail around 2 times, just like that. And that'll make a nice secure loop there. And I'm going to trim the end of my wire with my cutters. And now we're almost done. Now for the super fun part, we're going to cut the loops at the bottom of our tassel. And you'll see that all these little threads won't matter in a second because we're going to trim them all. So I'm just going to cut those and make sure I got all of them in there. It looks like I missed a couple here. And then I'm going to comb these down a little bit because some of these got a little tangled. I'm just combing these threads down so that I can trim them, make them all kind of the same length. And I'm going to trim just straight across the bottom. And if you wanted your tassel to be longer than this, you could cut your card longer that we used, the card that we used to wrap the threads around. Just make that longer. You might want to use more embroidery floss for your wrap so that it's fuller, because it'll look skinny if it's super long and if you use the same amount of threads. So there's our tassel. I want to make sure it's about the same length as our other tassel. That looks pretty good. And now we're ready to attach our tassels to our napkin ring. We're going to just use our round nose pliers for this. It's a little bit of a cheat. And we're going to open the loop that's on each side of the napkin ring, just slightly. You don't need to open it much. And I'm going to do that just by rotating out a little bit. We don't want to lose this round shape of our memory wire here of our napkin ring. Slide on one of our tassels, and then I'm going to use my pliers again to just close that little loop. So that's one side done, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I just open my loop a tiny bit, that, slide on my tassel, and then close that loop using my pliers. And there is our super fun bead and tassel napkin ring.